Hello, everyone. Welcome to the roundup here on Blood Bowl Live. Here to go through all of the last week's action and last couple of weeks' action, and actually the whole season's action of the ADBBL Season 8. This is our final episode and our end of season review. We're going to go through all of the games. We're not going to go through all the games. We're going to go through the tables. We're going to go through the playoffs. Then we'll look at the three final games that were played that we have not reviewed as yet. Joining me as they have all season, we have Mr. Scott Bryant. Scott, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Christopher. How are you this evening?
Very good, thank you. And we have Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, good evening, sir.
Evening.
Mr. Scott Bryant is using a new laptop, which is why he looks so beautifully and crisp. On my screen, he vanished, but he's now back again. So I'm hoping that we'll get through it. Hey, it's been 16 episodes. We're experts now. Of course, we're going to have technical difficulties on the very last one. It will be fine. We're going to dive in. We're going to go straight in and look at the season as a whole. Before we go into it, I'll say it at the end, I'll say it at the start. A massive thank you to all the coaches who have participated in this season for all of your commitment, effort, and enthusiasm. It's been one of our biggest. It's been our biggest season ever, especially with regards to games. Number of games have been played more than any other season. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and that's because of all of you. So a huge thank you to everyone for your effort. Tom, I'm just going to dive in straight at you. Before we look at the groups, how are you feeling going into season 8? We knew there was a brand new format. We had bigger groups, more coaches that you were going to play against, more games that you had to play. How were you kind of feeling going into it? Were you sort of anxious, nervous, excited? Sort of a big change for us.
Yeah, I think I was excited. First time I'd redrafted, so it was a new experience for me. So yeah, I was. It's also quite, I think we can kind of honestly say that the changes were a little bit Marmite with a lot of people, but I really enjoyed it. I really loved the fact that I've got to play new people I'd never played before. And it was just really, really nice to see actually the variety of teams as well. I know there was a few teams out there that were more than others, Corn for example, but it's always nice to see a nice spread of different races and get to play different people and see how they play their team to the best.
Scott, are you with us? I don't know if he is. Scott? No, I don't know if Scott is with us. Okay, yeah, can't hear you, sir. Check your input settings, and we'll get there. Yeah, I think looking at the kind of the team split that we had, like you said, lots of corn teams. It felt like a bashier season, I think, because of the Khorne, the Norse, the Blackhawks that we had, Chaos Dwarfs coming in the first season, where we saw them kind of rampaging through. It definitely felt like a bashier season. But now I look at the kind of breakdown, Dark Elves, Vampires, Skaven in there, three stunty teams. Wood Elves, Amazons, sort of. It was probably relatively even, but it seemed to feel very physical.
Yeah.
Kind of the breakdown.
I think there was a lot of bash going on, but it was nice to see a few Edge teams like keeping up with them as well. It was definitely one of those interesting ones, especially as you say with the new Chaos Dwarf team coming in, which kind of bedded in. It's just also nice to see that other teams that we thought, are they any good, actually come to the fore themselves, like the Gnomes. So they were like my little surprise for this season.
Scott, are you with us? Is he? I don't know.
Not, no.
Oh no, there you are. You are with us.
No, okay.
Oh, I think okay. I think you're with us with a big delay. Okay. Well, let's we'll still try and get Scott sorted, but in the meantime, let's have a look at the tables that we had then, and we will start with. I'm going to start at the very bottom and work our way up. So we're going to start at the very bottom of the NBC. So 16 coaches in the 16 coaches in the group. You'll see 17 in this one because we swapped one coach out. Um, any kind of let's look at the bottom half of the table to start with then. T-Belly Trudgers down to the Boulders Army there. Tom, any kind of big surprises for you in this group? I think looking at it, to me, there are a couple of coaches possibly possibly out of place, and you maybe we expected to be higher up.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key ones for me, because I played them, was the Buffalo Biggins being that far down on that list. It was a big surprise. This is one of those ones where realistically that whole group was kind of like the conference of death, really. A lot of very well seasoned players. But it's nice to actually see that, although there's some of the new people who've only just new to Blood Bowl are down the bottom there, they put up a good fight. There was a number of wins for a number of key players there.
What I think was interesting is that we definitely had. It felt like this group was. I thought looking at both groups that they felt relatively balanced ability wise. It felt like the kind of changing of the spread and the seeding of the draw did split the ability quite nicely.
Yeah.
But I felt it did feel like your more experienced, seasoned players landed in this group. And maybe some of your kind of newer players landed in the other one, which I think made this group feel definitely like from me being in it, made it feel a bit group of deathy. But at the same time, I was very glad to have avoided a lot of the coaches on the other side of the draw. So, so a nice balance.
Yeah, one thing I just want to kind of bring up, which is kind of interesting on this, which I was thinking the other day, is because we're only playing one game against one opponent, so you weren't having rematches. For the more experienced people, it gave them a little bit less chance to gamify it. So you couldn't just say, "Oh, I'll play you 2 days in a row," because I know I can beat you pretty easily. Not saying anyone would go down that route, but if you wanted to gamify it, you could easily get your SPP up and get yourself a very decent team before you then went and played the others. But because we were playing only one game each, that was quite a good way of kind of cancelling that out, I thought.
Yeah, I guess you didn't get the chance to learn from your mistake.
Yeah.
You had to just accept it and you had to move on to the next game. So you maybe didn't get that opportunity to have a game where you learn how someone plays and then have a second game where you then, you know, change the way that you do things, which I thought was interesting. Scott, do we have you? Do we not have you? We may have you with a delay.
I
Okay.
don't think so.
Oh no, well, we do have you, but I think you're delayed.
A very big delay. I'll jump off. There's a big delay, and I've
Yeah.
got an echo.
Okay, fine. I mean, it's great to see your face. Even just if you wave at us, and we'll cut to you, and you stick in the chat, and look your pretty self. Let's look at the top half of this table then. I think I agree. It felt like Buffalo Biggins maybe a bit out of place here. Riotous Rams definitely felt kind of out of place in the bottom half of this draw. And let's just look at them for a second, because I think actually when you have a look at the games that they played, the coaches they played against, the Jaffa Cakes, Dead Star Belgrave, Suffolk Suckers, Bleeding Clowns, Bitey Ducks, it's kind of they've got a they drew a lot of the more experienced coaches or coaches who have been growing. It was not an easy draw for them in any sense of the word. And lots of games there that maybe in the old format with bonus points, maybe that have kind of picked up a few more along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's quite a few redrafts as well. So, you've got yourself with Bitey Ducks there. You've got the Death Star Belgravia. was Plague Brigade a redraft? I
Yeah,
think it was. Wasn't it?
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and Riotous Rams. So there was a lot, I would say, a lot more redrafts in this division than compared to the other one. So there was a lot of more people already starting at a higher level. Plus, as I say, skills were at a greater point. But if you put them all in one conference, it becomes a very interesting match-off.
So we had Inglorious Bastards and Boulders Army went through to the college playoff at the bottom there. Due to dropouts, we then had a middle four people who went through, who were the T-Belly Trudgers, the Riotous Rams, the Buffalo Biggins, and the Wildermere Wasps. Went through to the conference playoff, the third playoff that we had. Looking at the next kind of run of four here, Dead Star Belgrave, Suffolk Suckers, Jaffa Cakes, and Plague Brigade. It was an incredible end to the season because there were I had spreadsheets working out possible permutations of who could and couldn't go through based on things, and you know, I think Carl's bad start meant that he finished in 8th here, but actually had an incredible ending run which put him in 8th place. Jaffa Cake, Suffolk Suckers, and Dead Star Belgrave all had a chance going into those last few games of squeezing into that top four. It was an incredibly tight push for those things, and it felt like the top four, certainly second, third, and fourth, ended up second, third, and fourth because other people tripped up rather than maybe their own results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's this nice thing that we do, which we give you a time scale of when you've got to complete your games in, but we leave it up to you and your opponent as to when you play those games. So that can really help, and or as some people have seen, hinder on it. The whole, do you do everything right up the front of the season, get all your games in quick, get them all done, or spread them over the course of the season, or do them right at the end. So I've yet to kind of get to the point of which is the sweet spot, but it really does result in some really dramatic endings.
Yeah, and definitely when we've got 8 games to play rather than 6, it's a lot, and you've got no repeat coaches, so you can't do a one-day back-to-back to catch up. I think it does create a different dynamic when you end up with a coach with a lot of games left. It does create something completely different. And especially in this group, it led to something really interesting. And I can see Lucas immediately in the chat here saying he had other commitments, so spent the whole end of the season watching games closely because he'd finished 8 games and was sat there on 15 points for a very long time, watching Dead Star Belgrave, Bitey Ducks, Bleeding Clowns, Suffolk Suckers, all of these teams, Riotous Rams, who could have knocked him out. And I had several conversations where I think if Luke's being honest in the chat, he'll agree. We sort of expected him to eventually be knocked out by someone, and it never happened. So it led to a really close end of the season, which was great. Let's look at that top 4 then. In the NBC, it ended with Transfigurian Terriers at the top, Bleeding Clowns, Bitey Ducks, and the Orphic Gladiators. 4 teams, you look at the coaches within those 4, and you've got coaches that make playoffs generally. You've then got Luke, who's only in his second season, a very good finishing for that with a brand new team as well. But very, very close. 3 teams on 15 points who spent a long time just looking down. And then, the next 3 teams all have 14 points. So it was very, 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 very tight and not a lot in it at all. Is there kind of it was very difficult at the beginning of the season to necessarily do this, Tom, but do you look at that top 4 and are you kind of surprised by anyone's placing in there? Was there anyone that you thought you would have put money on breaking into that top 4 who just missed out? Because I think for me, I was almost sad and surprised not to see Dead Star Belgrave in that top 4.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a bit of crummies, but it was interesting to see throughout the whole season that you say, you've got like some of the teams like the T-Belly Trudgers. I was expecting to be a little bit higher. Justin's a very, very good coach. So that was a surprise. Riotous Rams kind of was equally a surprise that they which left it maybe a little bit too late on that side of things. Those two and well, those three I would have thought were going to be main contenders in that the top 4 slots. But hats off to Luke, fantastic play, getting to grips with those Chaos Renegades, which, let's be honest, is not a team that's always known to just get all the touchdowns and stuff. It's quite a diverse, different style of game team compared to bashy teams and hybrid teams and whatever. So being able to get that quickly, those many points that quickly was amazing. Yeah, it's also quite good to see, like, Scott just keeping his Scott and yourself actually keeping yourself at a high level, getting yourselves in.
Well, that's an interesting point to make before we move on to the. We'll talk a little bit about John's run, but looking at second, third, and fourth, you've got Luke, who had a slower start, built momentum, went unbeaten for 7 out of 8 games in that group. You had Scott, who kind of had a bit of a dip in the middle of his run, but sort of recovered to get the position that he was in. And then you had my Lizard team, who had 5 wins from 5, and then a drop off of 3 losses from 3, and then the 4th loss in the playoffs. So it's 3 very different runs of form that kind of brought this together, and the lack of bonus points keeping it very tight as well, and keeping it very, very close. Scott's point in the chat, the new league format helped maintain the kind of uncertainty and dependency on other results, which I think made it very tense to watch. I think something that we've always had within our league, and it's I'll hold my hands up and say it's the only league I've been involved in, so I don't know elsewhere, but from an outsider's view, or when you were watching other games being played, it's always been very tense, and we've always built up a lot of drama and watching it and seeing where results are happening and how things are changing. And that feels like, without the bonus points this season, that felt like another level, because there was so little in it, and a draw was so important. But then also, like, a draw was 2 points lost and 1 point gained, and good and bad at the same time, compared to kind of your 6-point wins. So really interesting dynamic. Looking at the Transfigurian Terrors, then topped the group, 7 wins, 1 draw in that group stage. A very, very impressive run. Only conceded 4 in the entire of that first group stage. Or possibly only conceded 4 at all, because I never quite know whether these stats cover everything or not. Because I know that the run on tour play is like keeps going into playoffs, but 22 points out of a maximum of 24. It's one of the best runs I think we've ever seen.
Yeah, terror by name, terrifying by nature. It was absolutely shocking how amazing this team was. I can only dream of having a vampire team this good. The skills on this team are phenomenal. I hope, for everyone's sake, it's not being redrafted for next season.
I believe, speaking to Mr. Reader, that we won't see them next season. And to be fair, in his own words, he said, "No one wants that. It wouldn't be any fun." But possibly a future season to bring them back, because there are 4 vampires that I think you can fit into a redraft, all with pro, possibly with leader, bringing down the stock reroll. So there's a lot of things there. Let's look at the ABC then. Let's look at the top group, the group that you were both in. And we'll start at the bottom side of the group then. The 2 coaches that went through to the college playoff were the Hillbilly Howlers and Boulders Bowlers, with Washington Deadskins and Odin's Ravens both deciding to pull out of the season. I think probably it feels very harsh on Owen with the Boulders Bowlers. A brand new coach, had a very tough draw, did very, very well against some tough opponents. I mean, you have to look at his results, and you look at the coaches that he came up against. The likes of James, a 2-1 loss, Tom, a 2-1 loss. 3-0 loss to the Cherry Bombs, 3-1 to Simon, 1-0 loss to Numpties. He's kept games very, very close against some very, very good coaches, and a tiny bit of luck one way or another. And actually, I feel we could have seen a very good first season from him. I feel like he's probably learned a lot from the coaches he's played, but possibly bad luck, but a much better season than it looks like when you look at the numbers.
Yeah, I hope he comes back again, because he's he's the kind of person we want to come and join the team, because he did the sportsmanship with him was fantastic. You know, coming into this against, as you quite rightly say, again some very experienced players, and we're getting to the point now that there is no newbies. You know, the new breed of coach that comes in, they learn quick. You know, you've got lots of people who are playing just friendlies or even online, and they're already knowing their skills, they're knowing the positioning and how to two-die block and everything like that. So it's you know, it's a really interesting kind of setup with a lot of these new players. So well done for playing, and I hope to see him next season.
Yeah, and it's good. He's done like Scott made the point. He did a very he was a very quick learner, and I think you can tell that by, you know, some of the results he got. And I think he had some practice, possibly had some practice games, but you know, a 2-1 losses are good results. You know, being on the end of a 2-1 grind from the likes of James and Tom Huns is you know, it the fact that you got the one, sometimes you're like, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah.
You know, so he has put in some really good performances and done really well. Looking at then the other coach that went through to this was Simon, who we know from previous seasons. Simon, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get used to a team. Sometimes he has some of the worst luck I've ever seen, but we know that Simon's got the potential to get to the final four. He's done it before. He's been a semi-finalist.
Yeah.
You know, we know that he's got that in him. Looking at some of the results he had, you know, he first game of the season was against the Cherry Bombs, who ended up in a very good position at the top of the table. Jack's gone on to win a trophy this season. Jane is third season in with the same team. Elliot is a former champion. Jamie is absolutely brutal. James is a former champion. He didn't have the best of draws, but he's put up, you know, he's put up a fight, and he's actually built a squad that, if he chose to redraft, would look pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And again, it's this whole idea that you really have to hit the ground running. Because like you say, you can't play the person again and go, oh, right, I know their tactics. Now you're straight on to someone else with a completely different set of kind of way of playing, different team and different skills. So so it's a really difficult way to kind of get your team kind of skilled up in that kind of thing. And looking at his skills, he's gone down potentially a kind of a tactical route. So rather than kind of randomizing skills, getting those SPP and just using it straight away, there seems to be a lot more now of people storing SPP, being more tactical. So it's that kind of thing. If you don't start winning straight from the off, it can be very slow and very kind of dangerous territory.
And wrestle and tackle, as far as randoms go, aren't the worst either. You know, so you know he's got quite fortunate there. But be interesting to see what he plays, because he was also one of our standing coaches for Dark Elves and pulled off some very good results and some very strong performances. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. Looking in the chat, I can see Scott is in the chat, and we've got Dazzle Mack in the chat, who's not a coach in our league, but has sort of put some comments in on how it looks. Says likes that a newish coach has made the top four, means the league is quite inclusive and the levels aren't crazily different. Yeah, it looks like we split it into different sections. So yeah, the seeding was something we did brand new this season, but hopefully did allow a little bit of a level, so that people weren't completely group of death, you know, and there was a little bit more balance.
Can I just check, Chris? And am I back?
Oh,
Oh.
and in real time.
Just it was the power of chat and Jack. He sent me his love and all of his feelings of animosity to pink leaping elves. Yeah, here I am. So just as about to talk about cherry bombs. Just an interesting one. Dazamak, Daryl's living over in Corby. He's ADBBL online, Blood Bowl 3, etc. And asked him for his sort of view as an impartial. And really nice that he says there, if you see it in chat, guys, in terms of you've got the ladder which encourages development. It's very inclusive in terms of the league, but you've still, because of the splits we had, you've still got the incentive for coaches to aim for something, and we really, really saw that as well. So yeah, nice. Hey, nice to work technology as well. Just when chat thought, oh, we're going to be spared his inane witterings and ramblings for tonight. No.
It's beautiful to hear your voice. It's just wonderful. Not that we
You're
hear it every week, but it's lovely.
You're full of shit, Chris, and I love you for it.
Let's look at the third playoff then. Let's look at the conference playoff from your guys' group. We ended up with Honkington's Folly, Lavender Lynxes, Agartha Mewers, and the Clueless Crusaders in here. Jack in this group got all his games done very, very early. And it was it must have been, we got to recognize it. It must have been really tough because he had all his games played. He had his number of points fixed in there. He was in a position at the table, and he spent however many weeks. It must have been almost like 7 or 8 weeks just watching a coach go ahead of him and knowing he couldn't do anything about it. Must have Scott, it must have been really tough to kind of be in that position and watch yourself drop down.
I think I know I played Jack, and hands up, I had an incredible amount of elvish bullshittery against him, more than possibly ever. And I think for Jack, one of those coaches who all of the matches that he drew, and even the ones that were admin and the tour play and the slight losses, they were so tight. It was the classic game of, it was literally down to maybe 1 or 2 dice rolls, but on his side or the opposition side as well. And it just shows how close things can get. He's got a really good team there. He's got a really good team still to redraft. I know we were talking about it briefly last night. So yeah, and again, I think, he's got a good solid pedigree. He comes from a good background of the Blood Bowl Hun franchise, as it were. So yeah. Do I think we've seen the last of these Norse? No. And they are really cool models as well in terms of how he's utilized 40k minis in there. So yeah. And he's got the best looking beer pigs going.
You look at some of the games that he drew, and he's not drawn against, he's drawn against pedigree opponents. So Huntington's Folly is a pedigree Blood Bowl player, absolutely. Numpty's former champion and finalist. He's got some really strong results, and like you said, Scott, it's been very close. There's been one touchdown in it. Maybe a couple, but against some very strong opponents. And very unfortunate, maybe, to be as far down as he was. Tom, you ended up in this kind of part of the table here. Tell us about how your group stage went. How did you kind of feel after it? Did you feel like there was some missed points kind of there, some kind of dropped points that you shouldn't have dropped, or like, yeah, on balance, how are you feeling?
Yeah. I just want to say it was a bit mean of Scott could have just stopped at 3-0, didn't have to do the 4-0 on me. So but yeah, it was interesting because, as I say, it was a redraft. It is what it is. I think it's a learning experience from my point. Just a note: I have now had my one-off training session with Andy Davo,
which he's keeping very close to his chest.
Yeah.
We were discussing yesterday, not giving any secrets away.
Yeah, so he recommends to me start to play Snap. Apparently, it's quite an interesting game. It doesn't involve any dice. I can start off slow with that and go from there.
I just want to say, Tom, I scored the 4th one because I care.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at the next bracket up then. 5th to 8th place here. I feel like in another season, in another time, in another, like, it wouldn't take a lot for this 5th to 8th place to be 1st to 4th. Like, it's an incredible group of coaches here. You've got Jamie in 5th place, 14 points, James in 6th place, 14 points, Dave in 7th place with 13 points, and Jane in 8th place with 13 points. Not a lot, again, like the other group, not a lot in it at all. You know, one draw turns into a win, and you've got an incredibly different situation here. So a very, very close thing with all of these coaches. Was there anyone out of these four that either of you kind of was surprised either that they were this high, surprised that they didn't get into the top four? Anyone who you think feels out of position?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think all of them are excellent coaches. There were some great fun figures. Scott obviously mentioned Jack's 40k ones, but who couldn't ignore James's surfing corn, which looked amazing as well.
For me, team, like, aesthetically, team of the season for me. They're absolutely beautiful.
If he had finished the surfboards and put proper board design on the boards, then yeah, wholeheartedly. But I just felt it was like having a cake without the icing on. It was like having a Victoria sponge without the cream in the middle. And I thought all of those coaches, and we talked about it in the previous in the NBC. But anyone from that, from Jane upwards, I'd even go down to say, from 12th upwards, it's one or two results and people are in there. I mean, James started with a brand new team and he really did turn it round. And Dave had a phenomenal, season there. So yeah, I'm not surprised. But any one of these teams could have gone through. It was, as we talked about, it encouraged competition. It encouraged, there's so many permutations right till the very last game. And as we said, one of the amazing themes for this season is how many games went down to the very last play, the very last roll of the dice. So I think it could have been reversed anyway. And we've seen, all of these teams, they'll go through mini runs, yours truly included. So you'll get a good season of wins, and then all of a sudden you get two or three, really difficult results. So I think that's part of the addiction that keeps us coming back time after time, really.
Yeah, and just one final point you mentioned there, that for me there were two kind of silent but very effective coaches in this whole division, and they would be Graham and Jamie. So, Graham with those Amazons, that was a fun game. We had a 3-all draw, which was just hilarious, backwards and forwards. And Jamie, he's always there with his dwarfs. You can never kind of write him off.
No, I think I say it every season that I think Jamie, at some point, it has everything that he needs to put a run together to get to a big final and maybe to put some upsets in there. He's got, he only plays dwarves. And in doing so, he is getting to the point where he absolutely is like, he knows this dwarf team inside and out. And I think it's a matter of time. I think he just needs the right set of opponents, and he could absolutely storm this league one season. So absolutely, it was someone to watch. Looking at the top four, then, in this group, and I would say that going into this season, you've got two redrafted teams, two brand new teams coming in. You've got two former champions in this top four that I think you probably, maybe, I think Tom Huns I absolutely expected to be in the top four of here. Elliot got off to a slow start with this Nurgle team, but absolutely fought his way in there. And Phil, it's his many redrafts with this Corn team. He knows how they work now. I probably was surprised to see Phil make this top four based on the pedigree of some of the coaches that he's gone above. But I think that just shows how good a season he's had and the good results he has managed to put together here. He's really put together a really good run. Scott, tell me about your kind of your top four run here, because you had a very, very strong start, similar to me. I don't know if you can still hear me because you're disappearing
Yeah,
on and
yeah.
off my screen. You can, cool. You had a very kind of strong start, similar to me, but you recovered from it better than I did in my group. So was that starting run the key to kind of build the momentum?
Yes. But then, I mean, I started playing against Simon, and the fact that he KO'd one of my war dancers on his he rolled the Blitz event against me, and then he took out my war dancer. So I thought, oh, this is going to be a very, very long season as well. And that 1-0 win, I pinched it from him. And it was one of those games where that could have set the whole tone for the next several matches. So, as we always say in this game, you can only beat the team in front of you. And God, I love a sporting cliche just to throw in there every now and then. So for me, it was really, starting strong. But then, yeah, as soon as I played Mr. James Handley, Nuffle caught up with me in terms of casualties. And then it really gets attritional with elves, and because they're very expensive as well, it was a challenge at times. That and a really shit tree don't really help. So it was. So after going through to James and getting an absolute pasting from James, and then of course you mentioned Phil, and take my hat off to Phil. He beat me, and I think in both those matches, I think I'd lost. So I was one time I think down to 2 or 3 players left on the pitch in both of them. So yeah, difficult. So at the end of the day, I was, and I played JD, and he stat busted a thrower, which bless him, thanks JD. Yeah, it just shows a lot of people, your season can change, and it can change very quickly. So, we saw this with Tom as well. Just because you've got 1 or 2 results don't go your way, you can quickly turn it around. If you look at James, and we've mentioned Elliot there, slightly slow start, but then they really built up that momentum. And before you know it, they're creeping up that league, and they're, knocking on the door and then pushing into the top 4 place as well. So, yeah, second season build, but I think getting into the knockouts, that's when attrition really, really started to hurt as well. And Luke just turned the screw. Evening, Luke, by the way.
Tom, was there anyone in that top 4 that surprised you, either by making it or where in that top 4 they finished? Anything that was a particular surprise?
I think kind of not really, but Elliot was to get. I knew he would get in the top 4, but from the start he had, it's just shows what you can do if you know how to play teams. And as this is a new team for him as well, so it's a new draft of a team. So yeah, hats off to Elliot, and also just sneaking into second place, just taking it away from Tom is a bit of a pleasing sight.
So that's our 2 tables then. Playoffs decided. We'll go on to the playoffs in a second. Much bigger groups this season, and I think we'll probably look to do bigger groups in future seasons. Maybe not as big as this. Maybe bring them down a little bit, but a really interesting kind of dynamic with these bigger groups, and watching people jump up and down the table. It has been very entertaining to watch. Before we go into the playoffs, a little word on the honors. We're not going to go through all of the honors tonight, because once you do the redraft, some of them get a bit sort of shifted up and down, so we might not be exactly correct. We did yesterday award the honors to people who won something. A few coaches were not there, and will have something to collect. I am probably going to forget exactly which ones, but I believe it was Jamie with his dwarfs who got most kills. Phil had the highest value team, and Dave was tied with the most interceptions with 1 interception. Some of the other awards I think this is now probably the good time to kind of highlight them to people. We awarded the coaches coach of the season, which was voted by our coaches, to Luke, the coach of the Orphic Gladiators. Absolutely well deserved for the commitment he's put into this season. We also had the Daryl's New Man Award, which goes to a coach whose attitude is just exactly what we want to see from Blood Bowl: the fun, the enjoyment, regardless of results. And that award went to Leanne, the coach of the Boulders Army. So if I've just said your name there is probably something for you to collect in the shop. Please make your way there to collect it. Let's have a look at the playoffs then, and we will start with the bottom playoff, the college runoff. Only 4 coaches, because of dropouts, ended up going into this draw. And the Hillbilly Howlers and Simon kind of showed that although sometimes he doesn't have the best results, his experience in how to play the game can get him where he needs to go. And 2 very strong performances in order to get him through and take the title of the winner of the college playoffs. Looking at the bottom 4 here, Scott, I don't feel I feel like Simon was probably favorite in this group of 4, but you still need to get the results, and he's got them.
I think Simon was. A new team, very difficult in terms of starting it as well. And I think, and I talked to Simon about this before, as soon as he moved away from just having the one re-roll in the, with his team as well, and he's put himself in.
Has he vanished, Tom? Is it just me that...
No,
Oh, he's back.
I can hear him.
I heard him most of the time. I just missed the end of it, but I did hear most of it.
Yeah.
So me and Tom can hear you, Scott, and that was all beautiful. You may have disappeared off the stream, and I'm doing everything I can to actually get you back on there. But I can assure everybody who is listening that Scott made some very valid and worthy points there about Simon's performance. We are trying to get him back so that you can all hear them as well. Tom, Leanne has had it's the second season in a row without a win. She's had 2 touchdowns this season now compared to the last one. The enthusiasm is always there. Probably didn't expect her to get as far in this playoff, but she's been so entertaining to watch all season.
Yeah, absolutely. She brings the energy to any game that she plays, to the point now that she's got her eye on a certain little green team by the sounds of things in the new season. So she's clearly taking on Jane's motto, which is embrace the chaos, so that you can never know which direction she's going to be going in on the pitch. It's going to be absolutely crazy.
We will scroll down to the next lot of playoffs and have a look at those. And Tom, I'll probably let you give us a bit of analysis on this one, being where you were for some of the draw. And then I can also try and get Scott back in the screen. Some out of place coaches in this run, and some coaches, Jack with a bye in the first round, but very competitive. You look at some of these results, and there's some high scoring, very close results. None of them were walkovers at all, and a really tight run for Jack and Harrison to make it through to the final.
Yeah, again, it just shows the pedigree of the players and the coaches out there. It was a really, really tough one, straight from the top. I only just managed to scrape through against Graham's Amazons to get into the semi-finals. Equally, again, facing the halflings against orcs was an incredible match as well to watch and see. It's one of those games, or it was one of those kind of playoffs which there was no easy games. There was no walkthroughs kind of things when you actually were playing a game. And it just shows that a lot of different players know a lot of different skills on this. It was a shame that Rich couldn't play his game, and might have been a different outcome in the final. But yeah, it was. I loved every minute of it, and sorry to see that Harrison's Orcs didn't win it. Unfortunately, I was rooting for him. He's beaten me every time I've played him in the league. So he should have deserved it. But then again, so has Jack beaten me every time I played him. So yeah.
Scott, I think we have you back now. You're on the screen, so I'm assuming we do. This playoff had some close games. The one that kind of jumps out for me is actually the Wildermere Wasps versus the Argartha Muirs in the semi-final. 3-2 victory for Jack here, but high scoring from especially from like a Blackhawk team that I think got two or close to one turners or throw teammate touchdowns. A really kind of entertaining game by the looks of it.
Hello, Chris. Glad to be back. Thank you for knocking me offline again. Yeah, good match with both coaches. We talked about this at the time, the fact that Jack hadn't played since just at the start of December. And we know he plays a lot of Blood Bowl outside the ADBBL. We were wondering how, would he come back frozen? Like what I did there, Tom, in terms of the Norseman. Thanks. You can have that one. But also playing Simon, and Simon actually came into this on a bit of form as well. So the fact you've got 5 touchdowns, it just shows, to score 3 touchdowns in a game of Blood Bowl is usually a pretty good indicator of a good win as well. So Simon just, was determinedly dogged. He wouldn't let Jack, walk away with it, and a really, really good victory as well. I think in terms of experience, though, for me, yeah, we're not surprised that Jack took it and pushed on.
So let's look at the final then. It's not one of the games that we've gone over. A 1-0 victory for the Argartha Muirs against the Buffalo Biggins. In what on paper looks like it was a very tight game, tight on the casualties as well, but the Norse team also taking the lead there. Dead Orcs coming your way, miss next game Orcs, but also stat busted linemen. A very punchy affair. A deflection here that got Jack onto the deflections leaderboard. But an early touchdown from the Norse team looked like exactly what they needed, Tom, and managed to cling on from there to take the win.
Yeah, absolutely. Neither of these teams kind of hold back when throwing punches, and it was clear on this one. So it looked like it was a hard fought fight. It was interesting that there wasn't more from the Valkyries, really, but clearly the Orcs kept them in check because they've been quite dangerous. And unusually, a Yeti actually caused an injury. I think that's a rarity. It's rarer than Bigfoot. That kind of thing.
It's interesting, because I have to acknowledge that any narrative on the players and the actual positionals that you use and whether they do or don't do is we put it on the game. But I do love the fact that you look at this and you see a Yeti that I think even Jack acknowledges probably didn't do a huge amount for him this season, turns up in the final to become a star and get a miss next game in there and get the casualty there. It's Scott, it's fairy tale stuff that it may be in our heads, but it's really nice to have that narrative to the final.
Poetry, Chris. It's poetry. It's Nuffle smiling upon these two coaches and giving them his informal blessings. Yeah, and it's typical that we all know of Blood Bowl. I mean, there are rumors Tom's going to roll a 6 maybe one day, but to add that level of spice, they're both members of the the Tom Hobble Appreciation Society. There it is. They both play each other a lot of times as well. Got some very good skilled up star players in there as well. So that extra little bit of spice just to have the one player throughout your season who's been pretty average at best to pull it out, get the main casualty, and Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's really, really good. I think again it adds another layer of entertainment and fun in terms of all the mix of Blood Bowl shenanigans.
Jack's in the chat. He said Harrison got unlucky with some dice rolls, managed to screen him off in the end and stop the biggest threat of a player with block dodge. Jack, has become a very competitive player here. He's not had many seasons with us, but he's absolutely one to watch and one to keep an eye on. Some unlucky results got him into this third playoff. Same with Harrison, but they both showed sort of why they're pedigree coaches with a strong performance and strong run to the finals. So well done to both of them, and well done to Jack on that win. Let's look at the second playoff then, the Super Cup, and we'll have a look here at the coaches that ran through some very tight results in the first round. And I think the coach that stands out absolutely for me in this is the coach that goes on to win it, and that is Carl, who went into this playoff qualifying in 8th place. He had a good run at the end of the group stage, but had a really rotten beginning of the group stage, not picking up many points, clinged onto this position, and then kept that run going no matter how many casualties he had against him, and put an incredible run together to get through to the final, beating Andy and Dave Crowler, and then Dave in the final on the way. Scott, as a fellow rat lover, it was just beautiful to watch, wasn't it? It was incredible.
Loved it. I loved it. The fact A, it was Rats, B, it was Carl, and it just shows as well. There are a lot of synergies here when we come to talk about Luke's fantastic season as well. As long as you get into that knockout, then form sort of goes out the window. It literally, it's the classic, just a one-off game, and that's what we love about it as well. So form is really, really next to nothing. We know Carl was at times, it felt like down to his bare bones. I think he was one gutter runner, and that was it, almost at one point. And to see him, not give up, not give in, take my hat off to him. And the caliber of coaches, as you say, any other one of those coaches could have gone on to be maybe a semi-finalist or even a finalist in the main championship draw, and no one would have thought that was out of place. So such is the quality of these coaches as well. And a lot of these games are still on YouTube. If you want some entertaining watch backs, the final between Carr and Dave is a really, really good, and then also Mr. James Handley, Mr. Scott Norman, the Riptides versus the Jaffa Cakes, another really, really good watch as well.
Yeah.
Tom,
Sorry.
looking at Dave Rue's run to the final here. James, he's played two coaches who have been with us for a while. James, a former champion, getting tight results all the way there. And maybe he just came up. We'll go into the game now. Possibly just came up against a coach on an incredible run of form at the exact wrong time when you don't want to play them.
Yeah, I'd have to say that by the looking at the previous games, like you say, against Jane and also against James, there was a lot of casualties on his side. So he was losing key players on the way. As you say, Carl being the Pied Piper of Woodbridge, bringing in so many rats the amount of times, unfortunately, he's had to just throw them aside. Thank you.
That was top draw, Tom.
That was a good one. Yeah.
It's proof that both coaches are proof that if you just stick with a team and just see them through thick and thin and just consistently learn and learn and learn, you can get these teams to a really good standard and have a fantastic game at it.
Looking in the chat, Carl said...
Sorry, Chris, but Tom, did Andy Davo give you a list of phrases as in self-motivational for Blood Bowl?
Yeah, I've got the Andy Davo bingo card here. Yeah.
Sorry, anyway. Back to our worthy winner, Carl.
Looking in the chat, Carl's in the chat. Last game, I think, went down to a line rat dodging out. Had it not, I would have been 2-1 to Dave. A really lucky double pow uphill in my favour. Dave's a monster of an opponent. Really put me through my paces in that last game. I mean, it was very close in this one, and I think we have to acknowledge, Scott. We have to look at, and I think as I don't think I can look at this now, but maybe something to look at another time. Look, if we were to look at the amount of players that he has had to retire, or an opponent has retired for him, it has been an incredible turnaround on players, but he has managed to maintain, a block sidestep strip ball gutter runner, a block sure hands two heads gutter runner, a block leader thrower, a wrestle fend clan rat, a mighty blow blitzer. He's managed to maintain some very good players, even with the level of attrition that he's had.
And the players that he's built, Chris, and he's maintained, he's absolutely elevated them to game-changing status. We know that Skaven, even in their basic format, always give you a fighting chance, which is always at the back of other coaches' minds as well. And in the actual final, Carl showed that as well. He took possession near his own end zone, and then one gutter runner to another gutter runner, a couple of go for it, and then he's 1-0 up against the drive, which is phenomenal. So yeah, to have a dodge block sidestep strip ball gutter runner is a beautiful thing of filth, and then having dodge block sure hands two heads to get in, to get the ball and get out before you know it is great. And who doesn't like a mighty blow +1? So I think he's done very well. And I think that evolution, that journey, using so many rats as cannon fodder to get these stars to a really good level, that's a classic Skaven coach for you.
I think we have to firstly, a huge congratulations to Andy. Joint best winning run in the league this season. Various other honors that went his way. A really, really strong performance. And I don't think we're going to see this Skaven again next season, but seeing them in the future would be great, because they are, you look at where they finished last season, you would not have predicted the turnaround that Carl has had. It has been incredible. So a huge well done to him. And it's always great to see Dave Rue in a final. Dave is one of the coaches that we've got who I think is one of the most fun to play. He's also a coach that if you end up drawn against him and you haven't played him before, you learn a lot playing Dave. He's a really meticulous player. He knows what he's doing, and he's he's not won a season with us before, and I always think of him as an ADBBO champion, because he's just got everything that he needs to be it, and maybe just doesn't have the luck in the last point. But an absolute well done to him. This team has been incredible to see him build over the last few seasons. So well done to both coaches. A very hard fought game. Before we leave this playoff, we can't leave this playoff without mentioning the Jaffa Cakes. One of the talking points of the season, I think, with the absolute audacity of the approach of it, 0 team value, making your opponent pick the bingo balls for your for the star players that he takes against you. An audacious tactic that not only got him into the second playoff, but also got him the Stunty Cup this season. I think, guys, I think it's fair to say that I certainly was dubious of it early on, and have absolutely come round to the ridiculousness and the fun of it as being absolutely brilliant.
The bingo cage was a thing that will go down in the annals of ADBBL history, I think. Many years from now, people will look back and say, I was there when that bingo, cage was rolled, and when all of those star players came out. I'm sure someone somewhere is going to, immortalize it in song. So yeah, it was phenomenal, and it was just as much fun being an observer in store or online, just waiting for the other coach's reaction. Did they draw something like Crack and Grumbleberry, which meant there was no giant, or did they get something awful like Skitter, Bath Rag, Hackflem? Who knows what you were going to draw, the Black Gobbo, everything else. So it was really good. And just a kudos as well for Scott for last night and giving Harrison his deserved bounty. To win a kilo of Jaffa cakes. Life doesn't get better than that, does it really? Come on.
Yeah, I have to say it was a real differentiator when we were talking about gameplay and the level of professionalism in our league, of people who'd already be thinking 2 steps ahead when they knew who they were going to play. You couldn't do that with Scott's team. You just couldn't, because you just didn't know what you're going to get until you actually rolled it, which was I thought was the bit of a kick in the teeth sort of thing. But it was great fun watching it happen when people were getting excited that they were getting Kraken Grumbleberry because they couldn't get anything else. So it was really interesting to see. Plus, also it was great to see star players they wouldn't normally see.
Yeah, I think you saw a wide range of them. You saw interesting combinations, and I mean, as someone who played against it, it was absolutely terrifying, and you couldn't plan for it. And I think I got quite fortunate because I ended up basically facing a very similar team to the Goblins that I've played Scott as in previous seasons, and but it was just great. It was the anticipation before every game of wondering what inducements and what combinations were going to end up there, and you know the odd occasion where actually he couldn't take a giant and he got some low value star players, and suddenly it's like, well, actually there's almost not enough inducements for you to actually be able to fill the money. It was just incredible. So well done to him, a very worthy Stunty Cup champion. And we know he'll bring Stunties next season. We'll see what they are, but a very many congratulations to Scott for that. We will move on then to the big playoff, the Champions Playoff, the one that will decide the champion. The playoff that myself and Scott spectacularly went out of in the first round, but I think for both of us in a relative element of style here. I think the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from this group, and I'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, whether you think everyone who was in the final, that final group of 8, whether you think anyone should have been in there who wasn't, whatever your thoughts on it, the fact that 3 out of those 4 games went to extra time in that first round, and over that first round, the number of touchdowns scored, we had a 4-3, a 3-2, a 2-1, and a 2-0. Massive games, big high scoring games in these rounds, lots of casualties coming in all of them as well. It just kind of showed how close it was at the top of the table, I think.
Yeah, I have to say, sorry.
No, go for it, Tom.
I have to say that, yeah, I'm watching some of these games. I do think that we need to have like some emergency respirators in our Varks and Dragons, because some of those games were like really quite nail biting on the side. In particular, Scott and Luke's game, that was a phenomenal match.
I didn't think I was going to make it through it, if I'm honest, Tom.
No.
I thought at some point I would have some kind of attack. It was incredible, Scott. I mean, how are you feeling about sort of getting through to the top round, going out in the first round of that kind of top group? We're both in similar positions, that we both went out early on. I feel quite good about it because it went to extra time. It was very close. I put up a fight, and what will be will be. Kind of how are you feeling about it?
I have to say, first of all, myself and Luke, I think we will win the award for the handsomest coaches, for the season. I think we look phenomenal.
Hang on.
Sorry, myself and
Hang
Luke,
on.
we did look good.
Did you see Elliot and his bodyguards?
Yeah, but Luke's got facial hair. Elliot doesn't. So I think for me, going in there, and again, thanks JD for getting rid of a 2-season build thrower. That wasn't helpful, and Luke's dice, despite it was one of those just back and forth, and the fact we burnt our rerolls really quickly, both of us. But we still kept that enjoyment out of it. Yeah, and it was crazy at some point. Could have gone both ways. I didn't see that little bloody goblin behind the ogre for when kudos to Luke. He did some great one-turn touchdowns this season. So yeah, to come back at a 1 myself to get it to 3, or even at the last turn when I tried to do a 2 dice uphill blitz, that was close. And yeah, got them both down, and of course he had block like I did, so it was a going nowhere. But otherwise, it was a lot of fun. It was very, very good indeed. And I know that there was just the entertainment it gave, Chris, to yourself, to other Scott, James, other Scott was in there, Tom, you were there as well, and to Carl. I think that's what made it, the fact it was entertaining for so many people on so levels. And it was that emotional swing back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, kudos to to Luke. If you are going to beat elves, yeah, just get rid of them. And I mean, having 2 elves left on the pitch at the end of the day says it all. To score 3 touchdowns, including the 1 turner. Yeah, to do everything right, everything wrong. It was just even though I felt lost, I felt, yeah, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the beer after as well. So can't fault it.
Well, with Cherry Bombs out, with Chaos Storm dropping out in this round as well, Gilded Knights of Cerulean drop out, and the Bitey Ducks sadly end their season as well. We left with a very
Chris,
impressive
we
final four.
talked about everybody else. You said you were happy there as well. Did you walk away from season 8, pleased with the Ducks' performance?
I felt that I felt I could pinpoint in the games that I lost. I felt I could probably relatively comfortably tell you where I lost them and know whether I could do anything about that in the future. So weirdly, I felt quite happy. I could kind of I thought that I was a bit unfortunate with some of the games that I lost. I felt I was a few things kind of went against me, but then I also felt that there were some key points. Against Elliot, knew how to manage extra time better than me, and that's why he won. And he did it superbly. So I think, yeah, I'm happy. I'm disappointed to end the season with 4 losses from 4. That doesn't feel great, but I've come out of it. I feel like learning something, so I'm pleased. I think that's the best you can hope for. Final 4 of the Orphic Gladiators, the Bleeding Clouds, the Numpties, and the Transfargarian Terrors. I think the person I felt the most sorry for in this Final 4 was probably the Numpties, because I very much felt that John was on a slightly unstoppable rampage to get through to that final. Tom, we were at your house playing Blood Bowl while both of these games were going on at the same time, keeping an eye on the fixtures. And I think it's probably fair to say, without doing anyone a disservice, that we were more surprised by the Orphic Gladiators holding back the Clowns than we were John's 2-1 win. Not to take anything away from Elliot, just the skill on that vampire team.
Yeah, absolutely. I just was amazed that that John managed to get so many decent skills on those vampires. They just block dodge pro, block dodge strip ball, block dodge tackle, strip ball block dodge. Those are just immense skills there, and 2 thralls with kick as well. So really dictate the pace of the game. It really looked like it was a one-sided, unfortunately. But the interesting thing was, I noticed that in the numpties didn't have that much of inducement money either. So looking back at the numpties, they were equally well skilled as well, with a lot of block tackle and mighty blow. So it was a really strong kind of game on both ends.
Scott, were you looking at either of these 2 semi-finals? Was there a particular way you thought they were going to go? Do you feel that the 2 teams that ended in the final, did that feel kind of right to you, looking at the balance of the season?
I agree with everything that people have said about Mr. John Reeder. Second year, really fine tuning these vampires to a phenomenal level, as Tom's just said. It's always felt that he had the slight edge over Elliott. But again, new team for Elliott, and just shows he can get to a semi-final. With a brand new team after a bad start. Shows the caliber of him as a Blood Bowl coach. In the other draw, I did have Acrades down as my favourite to go through there. I thought it would be 1-0 or 2-1 close. When Luke did score that turn 8 touchdown with his Dark Elf, for him to hold out for Acrades, kudos. It's a great game because we know Scott is an exceptional play coach. Seems to have had a lot of fun this year with the Clowns as well. I know he's really looking forward to playing his Chorfs next season. Look at that's going to be an ominous team in it making as well. I just think Carl did exactly what needed to be done. He had his block Roger. I think he's back for that game, and he really, really utilised him. And sometimes it's really difficult when you come off something like a 4-3 win to then go in and have to play quite a grinding match as well. It just shows the difference in terms of as a coach as well, where particularly I think we've seen Luke grow and mature. The fact that he can play quite an open, expansive game. He knows how to do a one-turn touchdown as well. But when the opportunities aren't on, he knows how to tighten up and really grind that win.
Well, let's have a look at the final game then. There was a long gap, but the top playoff got their playoff games in very quickly, which meant there was a 3-week gap between the semi-finals and the finals. Let's have a look at the final. A 2-1 victory for the Vampires. John's third ADBBL title here. Coming in with a good result. Looking at the way that the way that the game went, a turn 6 touchdown and a very quick response from Luke to tie the game at halftime, and then John managing to get the win on turn 15. To make it 2-1 here. Relatively even on casualties, even on SPP here. Not a lot in it at all between these two coaches. What do we think swung this one then? Did John's experience prevail here? Because I think one thing that jumps out to me is that John has made sure in almost every game that he hasn't worried about the inducements he's giving away. He's not really had as much of a concern about how much money is he giving. Look at the game against the Snotlings. He even spent his own treasury to take a biased ref in order to combat them, knowing that he would give more away. It wasn't as much of a concern, and he preferred to have the players. So I was quite surprised when he went into this one. He had a player missing next game. He didn't use all of his treasury to get himself up to the full 16 and have all the thralls. Instead, he did keep it down in this game, which meant Luke only had access to Acorn. So really, for me, it's like it was quite interesting to see that at the very last minute, John knew he needed to manage what Luke had access to.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see how many times he was fouling as well, John. He's not known to do a lot of that. I've just quickly gone through his previous games. There were a few times where he's fouled, but only once or twice. Here, he's consecutively fouling in the second half. So clearly he was getting a bit rattled, and he was trying to think, well, it's going to be a kind of a game of attrition here. So trying to get out key players, especially the likes of that Renegade Goblin Icarus 2.
It sounds like a free bribe came into the game, looking in the chat, which might explain the fouls.
Got ya. That makes sense then. Okay, but yeah, it takes nothing away from the skill of both of these teams. They are very, very good, and I believe just seeing in the actual chat that Luke says that he thinks that Scott has said that he's scored more touchdowns against him than any other coach now, and we know how well Acrades plays.
Scott, Luke sort of had an incredible run Game one of the season was his only loss. He then went unbeaten all the way to the final here, and he's come up against the other coach who has had probably who had a better run than him. There's not really any other coaches out there who had a better kind of consistency than these two. Did John's consistency kind of just tip him over? That kind of the extra SPP he's managed to gain throughout the season?
I think John's experience. I think John's the second tier build with the second season build. They're not going to be second tier for much longer, are they, Vampires? The second season with Vampires, John's experience, his knowledge, his attention to detail. I think that was the difference. We're talking very, very, very fine margins here as well. I just want to shout out. If you look in chat as well, and this sort of goes out to Jack, to Carl, to Luke, and to Scott Norman. They've won all stuff this season. They're all very humble, which is lovely to see as part of our community. But everybody, they're all talking about luck of the dice and one dice. That's Blood Bowl, guys. That's why we play it. So please, what you've achieved this year is thoroughly, thoroughly well deserved. Just look forward to coming back next year and trying to maintain that, because of course as soon as you start winning, as soon as you've got a name and a little bit of a good team, then people will recognize that, and people will up their game, which is awfully good for all of the community. So all of you, very, very well done indeed again, and enjoy.
Looking in the chat, John's in the chat saying that he agrees with Luke that the kind of pre-game tactics of keeping the team value maybe down for this one, limiting the inducements that Luke had access to, possibly gave the Vampires the advantage, as well as the extra reroll on top of all of the pro and everything else that John's got in his team, gave them a boost as well. I couldn't think of two coaches who I think probably deserve to be in this final more than these two. John, John was due another incredible run. Last season was a very tough one for those Vampires. Got absolutely sort of battered around the group stage, and only made it as far as the second, as the bottom half playoff. And Luke has, for his, we have to remember it's only Luke's second season with us. And he's got through to the final in his second season with a brand new team. This isn't a redraft. This is a new team this season. It's two coaches who have had incredible runs, and it's come down to the smallest of margins, the smallest of tactics, possibly just a little bit of experience in managing the game. But otherwise, it's two great performances. So a huge well done to Luke for his performance here. And John is probably one of the best Blood Bowl players in the county. In any tournaments that we go to, in any leagues that are run, he's always one to watch, and always one that you wear a slight badge of honor if you manage to beat. And I think that kind of shows the pedigree that John's got as a coach. So a huge well done to him on his third title, cementing his position as the coach with the most titles in the league. How long will he keep onto it for? We will have to see. That is that's the last game. That's the last game. That's all the games. That's all the playoffs. That's everything from season 8. It's been a great season. It's been an amazing season to watch. And again, I'll say it again. I'll say it 100 times. A massive thank you to absolutely everyone who has played, who has contributed in whatever way, shape, or form they've done so, and contributed to making this one of the best seasons that we've ever had. Looking forward, then, season 9 will be with us. We're going to have a few months off. We're going to take a bit of a break. We're looking sort of maybe June time, so everyone can have a little bit of a breather after this season, play some other games, play some tournaments, whatever they want to do. Scott, what are you going to be up to in the off season? And have you got your decision made for season 9 yet, or have you got a few months to tinker?
I will be tinkering as I always do. you know me, when I can get the opportunity to tinker, I'm not going to pass that one up. It's just what happens when you get to a certain point in your life, doesn't it, really? So looking forward to that. Looking forward to a couple of tournaments. We have the Ipswich Classic, which I believe is sold out now, Mr. Co.
It
So
is, but if people are interested, please let me know because we might be able to squeeze you in.
excellent. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to the New Dice Please. We'll be going on our first road trip of the year. So down to Yeovil for Cake or Death. We're also going to be later on in the year going up to Sheffield. We'll still be doing the usual dribbling and whatnot on the New Dice Please podcast. Keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, I think I might be going with Dark Elves for season 9. I suspect they will be a 2-season build if I do, but you never know. If a new team and if a new Blood Bowl edition comes out, then I may change my mind. Watch this space.
Tom, what are you thinking? What does your off season look like? And have you got your season 9 team sat ready to go?
Yeah, well, like yourself and Scott, we're having a little trip to the West Country, so that will be good fun. So New Dice Please on tour. We're also later in the year heading up Sheffield way as well, so to the Blood Bowl Open. So keep an eye out for that. On that side of things, I'll be furiously trying to learn everything I've been taught by this league and other people, and also on the looking to play a few games in the store actually. So if anyone's fancies games, please, let's not stop just because of the league stopped. We've got the Dungeon Bowl games going on as well, but always up for a game. Equally, new season, not sure yet. Keep my options open for the moment. Might be a redraft, might be a new team.
I am, excuse me, I'm currently committed to the Rats for season 9. I've got two. It's too tempting a redraft for my Ice Baron to not bring them for the next season. I've got too many great players there, and I've got to give them another go because they were so much fun. So swingy, but I absolutely loved playing them, and I've got some superstars that I feel like need another run out and need to either get killed or win something. So Carl says take the Roger, Chris, I dare you. No. As far as the as far as the off season goes, you know what? I'm going to play a little bit of Dungeon Bowl. I'm going to do a few Dungeon Bowl games, and we're going to do, we've got the Ipswich Classic, we've got some other tournaments to go to, but I think I'm going to, Blood Bowl seasons are can be intense, and I think I'm actually going to take a little bit of time to play some other games and then come back to Blood Bowl refreshed and get some rats running around like mad. So I think that's probably my plan. The last thing that I've got then before we leave is, as always, we sit here every Monday. We do these ridiculous reviews of the season and reviews of the games, and we use all the sporting cliches we can. But it wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for the two gentlemen on your screen here, Mr. Scott Bryant, Mr. Tom Hoffel. A huge thank you to you both for sitting here with me on a Monday night and running through all of these games and giving the people something to watch on a Monday night. It's fantastic as always. We absolutely love doing it, and the roundup will absolutely be back with you next season with more of the same. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Check out the podcast, which will continue over the off season. The roundup will be done, but we will be back next season for more of these same Twitterings. A huge thank you. Enjoy the off season. We will see you when we return.